Newsnight viewers who have any interest in these things won't need any help in identifying this car. It is, of course, a Ford Sierra. 10 years ago, it was ahead of its time. Now it's one of the commonest vehicles on the roads. No car is more emblematic of corporate culture in Britain. It's the company car for middle managers and salesmen. Yet, at the Paris Motor Show yesterday, Ford announced they're going to stop producing the Sierra. Why should they abandon something which appears to have been so successful?
The new Ford Sierra, a dynamic driver's car.
The jelly mould was unveiled in the city in which it's now being buried exactly 10 years ago. Ford had sold 3 million of its predecessor, the Cortina. The Sierra was intended to become as indispensable to middle managers as a secretary, an expense account and membership of Rotary. Of the 1.25 million Sierras sold in Britain since 1982, 4 out of 5 have been company cars. Steve Taylor had the job of selling the car in the mid-80s, and that included taking head-on the bad press the car had at its launch.
A car's image really develops over the first weeks and months that it's in existence, and if you get bad press in the very early days, it's very difficult to recover from that. And I think one of the problems certainly we had in terms of developing Ford advertising was trying to find ways of countering, you know, the kind of press effect. He was this sort of nice conservative Cortina that we all, you know, knew for years and loved, and all of a sudden you've taken it away and replaced it with this, you know, thing that really is a bit too different for us. It's really a bit strange for us, and I think it, you know, it's had that tendency to polarize people ever since it was first launched.
Radical may not be the word that springs to most people's lips when they think of the Sierra, but it does have its fans, even its own fan club.
I like the shape. The shape is very important to me. It's a fantastic shape. Even the dashboard is a terrific shape, very appealing. And it goes with the road holding and the comfort. Everything about this car I like. I think everybody who gets them falls in love with them. There might be the odd exception, but everybody that I've spoken to loves them.
But reaching the goal of most successful company car brings its own problems of image. If we believe advertisers who tell us cars are an expression of our personality, what does owning a Sierra tell the world about us? That we're somebody on the way up the corporate ladder, or satisfied to be a small, interchangeable cog in a vast machine? The car Ford plans to replace the Sierra with is something they've called the Mondeo, a world car named thus because, say the marketing men, Mondeo conjures up world. Except in English, that is. Well, with me now is Stephen Bailey, the author of Sex, Drink and Fast Cars. Made a lifetime study of the Ford Sierra. Do we mourn its passing?
Well, in a way, yes. But I think it's important not to be too cynical about this last incarnation of the Dagenham dustbin. It's important to remember that when this car was introduced 10 years ago, it represented a huge step ahead for a hitherto rather cynical manufacturer. I mean, with the Sierra, Ford invested, I think, more in design and ergonomics and in careful consideration of what they thought the customer wanted than any manufacturer had hitherto.
But then, having introduced this original radical design, they then tried to make it more conventional, didn't they? That's why they put boots and things.
Yes, well, their terrible problem was Ford identified the problem they had in that competing with the Japanese, that they had what in the jargon of the industry is they had a specification-adjusted price disadvantage of 40%, which means that, you know, money for money, you got less car in England than you got from Japan. So they knew they had to sell technology, and you know, the Sierra was invested with the semantics of technology, wonderful aerodynamic shape, carefully designed ergonomic interior, and so on. The problem is there's no population on Earth, or at least no population in the Western world, less technologically literate, you know, than the British, and Britain is, you know, par excellence Ford's European home market. So they had to sort of de-radicalise this car through the course of its career.
Now, how did it acquire its reputation for, how shall I put it, naffness?
Well, I'm not entirely sure that it has, really. I mean, the Sierra is an honest, legitimate, you know, product. I think if there is a problem with its identity, it's that Ford owns the middle market in Britain, and most of Ford's sales come from selling to fleets, to the big companies who buy cars for their sort of lower middle management. So inevitably, and this is why one sympathises with Ford's marketeers and their management and their designers, they wanted to get away from the Dagenham dustbin Cortina idea. They wanted to make something more sophisticated, but they didn't want to lose the Cortina market. Hence the terrible sort of creative tension in the Sierra. They wanted to push ahead, but their market was holding them back. So halfway through the life of this car, they put a boot on it, and while speak to a Ford man in '81, the year before the Sierra was introduced, they said, oh no, we've left the Cortina behind. What in fact they've done at the end of the Sierra's life is just reintroduce the Cortina.
If you were a manufacturer, what lesson would you draw from the parable of what happened to this Sierra about the British market?
Well, I think Ford got its fingers burnt by going too far, very bravely going too far with the original Sierra. Then they clawed back. But if you look at what's been happening to the European and Japanese motor industry since the Sierra, everybody has imitated Uwe Barnson, the Sierra designer's original idea. Ford, in my view, should have kept on being brave and pushing forward, because in the successor to the Sierra, they're going to have to do the same. Unless they can actually not just have the semantics of technology, but have the reality of new technology, they will have lost that middle market which they so treasure.